So, Nature's First Law. Have you ever heard about that book? Well, I'm not here to talk about the book. I'm here to talk about raw food. Nature's first law. All animals on the planet, for all of the planet's history, have and is still eating a diet consisting of 100% raw food. Except humans, who have been cooking some of their food for a little while in the grand scheme of things. Granted, the last, 100 years or so, we've been cooking most of our food, but still a large part of the Earth population is still eating a large quantity of raw food every day. So in the grand scheme of things, looking at the whole, humans have been cooking some of their food for some time, but for the majority of our evolution going way back, we've been eating raw food. So in the discussion of diet, when we're discussing what the optimal human diet is, the first thing that we need to establish is the fact that the optimal diet must be raw. I'm willing to discuss with people whether or not meat should be eaten, or what about insects, and what about dairy, and what about all these different foods, roots, leaves. There's so many different things that we could be eating. And even though I have my opinions, and I find fruit to be the only thing that's truly optimal, I'm willing to discuss. But the one thing that is beyond discussion is whether or not our diet should be raw. Why, you say? Well, think about this. As we started cooking, did we improve our diet? Did we? If all of the animals are living on a raw diet, and we've been living on a raw diet for the entire span of our evolutionary history, and then at a certain point we started adding cooked food, did the act of cooking actually improve our food? And of course, if we didn't have access to anything else, then obviously the act of cooking was part of why we survived, and overall we could say that, yeah, cooking helped us survive. Cooking helped us get enough calories in a time and a place where getting adequate calories was difficult. But I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about survival strategies. I'm talking about in a scenario where all foods are available to us, like essentially it is right now in human history. When all foods are available, is there a benefit to cooking our food? And of course not. There's no benefit to cooking our food if we could obtain the same nutrients from raw food. When we cook foods, two things happen. We damage and denature nutrients. Obviously, if you put your finger in the fire, what's going to happen? It's going to burn, it's going to damage your finger, eventually it's going to completely damage your finger, so it's no longer a finger, right? It's just ash. So cooking is a destructive process, not a constructive process. It breaks things down. We want to break down the food ourselves. Our body is designed to break down food. We take in matter, all the animals, we all work in a very similar way. Genetically even, we're very closely related to all the other mammals, and we're all designed or evolved, whatever word you want to use, to take in food matter and break that matter down, extract the nutrients we need, extract the fuel we need, excrete the waste. That's essentially what food is all about. When we cook our food, we damage those nutrients, and I don't see why that would be a good thing. We also create toxins. Depending on how we cook, we create toxins when we cook. So we're adding a toxic load to our body, essentially, that it would do better without. I'm not saying it can't live on cooked food, and I'm not saying it will die eating cooked food. Sure, we can eat cooked food and survive, but the question is whether or not it's optimal, idealistically speaking, and also practically speaking. People say things like, well, raw foods are harder to digest, but they're talking about broccoli, and they're talking about potatoes, and they're talking about carrots, and all these things that are not really human food. human food should be the food that is appealing to us in its natural state, that's fully edible in its natural state without processing. And the only food that really fits that description, in my opinion, is fruit, tropical fruit. Sweet, delicious on its own. We can eat a full meal out of it. We don't have to put any sauce or dressing or spices on it. It's just good as it is. And nutritionally speaking, looking at the nutritional profile of fruit, it's perfect. It's really ideal. Sure, B12, not a food nutrient really. Vitamin D, not a food nutrient. You get vitamin D from from the sun. We have a video on B12. You can check it out here. So those nutrients aside, because people use those arguments a lot, fruit has everything we need. I don't see why cooking something else would improve our diet. So let's just set the record straight. I mean, raw food, that's what it's about. There's no reason to discuss whether or not we adapted to a cooked food diet. If we adapted to a cooked food diet, I don't think we did, but let's say we did, we adapted to a diet of cooked food, that would literally be going down in terms of evolution. We adapted to a less nutritious diet. We adapted to a more toxic diet. And even if we did, okay, let's just say we did adapt to a cooked food diet, wouldn't it still be better to just get all those same nutrients in an overall better ratio from raw food? Why is the cooking in itself something good? I mean, it's pointless. It's pointless as long as we can get those nutrients in raw food, which we can if we're eating quality tropical fruits. Mostly tropical fruits anyway. We can eat temperate fruits as well, but we don't really rely too much on them. Tropical fruits, that's where it's at, in my opinion. So as long as we have access to that fruit, there's no reason why we need to eat cooked food. Now, that being said, of course, there are all kinds of circumstances that cause us to evaluate things up and down and sort of decide whether or not to do this or that. And sure, you know, in human evolution, cooking certain foods definitely played a part in our surviving. Even in today's world, I can definitely appreciate the benefits of eating some cooked foods, you know, sweet potatoes, pumpkins, beans, rice, simple plant-based foods, cooked very simply, just steamed, that sort of thing, where you minimize the creation of toxins and you preserve as much nutrients as you can. That's a pretty good diet. I mean, I'm not saying that it's like, oh, that's terrible. I'm just saying, in the discussion of, like in the idealistic discussion of what is optimal, there's no doubt that raw is optimal. Cooking wouldn't add anything. And to all you guys out there that would say, oh, but what about the lycopene? You cook tomatoes and they get more available lycopene. Well, then I would say, why do we need more lycopene? Why do we need more of any nutrient? Why would we need to cook foods to make them more concentrated so we could get more of certain nutrients? While what about all the other nutrients that we're getting less of in that same food because we're cooking it? I'd rather trust the way it's been for millions of years. I'd rather trust that nature produces whole foods, and those whole foods, we relate to them. And those nutrients in there are there in a good balance for us to the degree that we find that food delicious. So if I'm eating a leaf, I'll find it quite disgusting, not very delicious, but kind of edible maybe. And it'll have certain nutrients that I like, and to the degree that I find it delicious, it's nutritious, but it wouldn't be able to sustain me. If I have a mango on the other hand, it'll be like, yes, it can sustain me. So that's my body responding to that. So, you know, if you can't find enough good quality fruit, going to the next best thing, probably a good idea. You know, cook up some sweet potatoes. It's not a big deal. It's going to provide you with almost, you know, the same kind of nutritional profile. It's pretty good. I'm not trying to sort of say it's terrible to eat cooked food. I'm just saying, because people tend to argue that, you know, oh, humans evolved eating cooked food and this means that it's optimal for us. Well, we evolved eating cooked food because we couldn't source enough fruit. We had to go to the next best thing. We had to look for other sources that weren't edible in their natural state, that we now had to cook in order to make them edible. And that made us survive. Sure, we were able to source enough calories, whereas otherwise we'd probably have to try and live on leaves. Not very sustainable. So we found some roots, we cooked them up, and there we go, we survived. Our brain got bigger, or all that. That's another discussion altogether. But I guess my point here is that if you can get enough calories from fruit, which is easy, and it's good quality fruit, it's good. It'll give you what you need, but there's no need to then look for the arguments for why we should eat cooked food. Once that's out of the picture, that the raw diet is certainly optimal, then we can get into what foods are appealing in their raw natural state, and should we eat meat or not, and that's okay. I'm open to that discussion. Personally, it's very simple for me. I don't find meat appetizing. I don't want to suck the tits of a cow. It's not doesn't feel natural to me. Leaves and vegetables, kind of boring. Roots inedible in their natural state. Carrots maybe once in a while. I don't know. I don't want to eat carrots as a meal. Fruits though, oh yeah, papayas, mangoes, bananas. It's all there. It's just super delicious, and nutritionally it looks great. So raw is law, definitely. Raw is law. Every animal eats raw food. Don't worry about eating a raw food diet and thinking that, oh, maybe I should add some cooked food. Think about it. What would that add to your diet? Like strictly in terms of nutrients and scientific analysis, what would cooking your food possibly add to your diet? And the number one argument is that it makes it more edible. It's like you can't eat, raw broccoli and carrots. Well, you shouldn't eat broccoli or carrots at all. Just forget about broccoli and carrots. Yeah, you cook them, you can eat them. It's more edible than if you don't cook them, but you don't have to eat them at all. You can eat bananas instead, and you can get all your calcium from that. There's plenty of calcium in bananas and papayas and everything. So it's kind of a bad argument that we should cook to make it more edible. And of course, the fruit is available year-round in the tropics, and it's shipped all around the world. So it's pretty easy to be fruitarian pretty much anywhere if you want to, but the question is whether or not you're able to source quality fruit, obviously. I'm gonna sign out now. It's afternoon here in Thailand. Sun is setting in about an hour probably. Thanks a lot for watching. I appreciate your time. If you made it this far, that's super awesome. Comment down below what you think about the topic, and I would love to hear your opinion. And in the meantime, eat your fruit. Raw is law. Trust it, but don't worry about it if you're eating some cooked food as well. That's okay. But don't go around thinking it's optimal. Obviously it's not. Thanks. See you around.